Great. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for giving us a little bit more of your time. It's good to see that you came back, right, for more. And we're excited to be joining or be joined this morning by Dr. Matt Meyer and Lane Freeman here at the office to provide us some information, a kind of a deep dive, if you will, on some of the work at the agency and across the system related to distance education, as well as our initiatives and work around credit for prior learning and business and industry engagement. So very excited to have these two individuals speaking for us on these topics. And so just wanted to make sure, I think we've already got our sound checks out of the way, but I'll go ahead and I think Lane is going to kick us off with information around our distance education program. So I'm not sure, Lane, if you've got things to share on the screen or for what your approach will be today, but I always learn something from conversations with him. So I look forward to learning today as well.
Thank you, Nate. Welcome this morning. I just wanted to give you guys a brief overview of some of the things that are here at the system office, but also some national trends in distance education, just things to be on your radar so that you, kind of know what you're getting into. Obviously, distance education has been a pretty important topic over the past couple of years. It's always been important, but as we've moved students remotely, sometimes against their will, but it was kind of the pandemic. And as we move on the other side of this pandemic, we're going to see that probably continue students choosing to go online because of just the way the pandemic is almost reframed and almost a reset. So what we're going to talk to briefly about today, and I'd love to give you some opportunities to ask questions towards the end of this, is faculty preparedness. The Department of Education's new distance education regulations that came out this past summer. What HyFlex is. The HyFlex has been discussed and people are attempting to do some sort of HyFlex, and I want to really kind of drill down on what the definition of HyFlex is, and then what is NC-SARA and what roles might you play in NC-SARA. So first of all, I kind of mentioned this a second ago, was that the pandemic really pushed us to distance education far beyond what we thought we would have to do. And so typically we'd have instructors who on our campus were like, I'm going to be a face-to-face instructor. I don't need to worry about the online component because I have to do face-to-face. Well, we found out quickly that when we send everybody home for slowing the spread or distance, social distancing or quarantines, that we can't stop our educational process because of that. And in doing so, we found out that we had some faculty who had adopted online already as an instructional method. We also found that our faculty who weren't quite prepared for this had to get up to speed really quick. And so some areas like the CTE, where you had a lot of hands-on skills that were necessary, our college and career readiness areas, and continuing education were another area that was really hit hard by the pandemic. And so we're going to focus on is preparing those faculty moving forward. We're starting with the pilot in the spring of starting to micro-credential faculty, focusing first on CTE faculty and preparing them on how do you do the basics in the learning management system. So how do you add a document? How do you add activity completion rules? How do you set up a grade book? Because I was reminded during this time of all the assumptions I have about what we know about a learning management system and how it operates. Those people who have avoided the learning management system had no clue. Like, you can't go into Moodle or Blackboard and just double click on the screen like you can in a Word document and add text. There's a skill to that. It's not hard to do, but we need to have that training. So we're going to be moving towards that. I think we're probably going to focus on automotive faculty first. And so you may be getting some calls and emails from me about going after and recruiting some of those faculty to come on board. And again, the faculty, the course is going to be trained, set up in a way that shouldn't be as intimidating. It's going to be just getting the basics and doing things in their online classes or their face-to-face classes, for that matter, that they need to be doing anyway. So it's not going to be a duplication of whatever efforts they would be doing. The virtual learning community is also in place, and this is a little different than what I'm doing, but the Professional Development Center that's located on the Wake Tech campus has Darren Evans there, and he is great about if you want a specific faculty group to learn about how to do a specific skill set of getting that together and offering that professional development. So when the pandemic and we started getting back on campus, he will also go to campuses. He also offers webinars for that. So that's kind of how we're moving forward and preparing our faculty to teach online. Again, a lot of our curriculum courses, our humanities courses, a lot of those were kind of already online. And so that wasn't as big as a leap as it was for our CTE, CCR, and continuing education classrooms. So the Distance of Education, Department of Education came out with some new regulations that went into effect of July 2021. These topics had been on the, been in a discussion for Department of Education for about 3 years. And then the pandemic really said, all right, we've got to get serious about this. We need to roll this out. And so they moved forward with it. And I'm a little different than some people on my approach for regulations. I don't get really scared of new regulations. I try to find the silver lining in it. First of all, I think the regulations were really there in place to protect students from bad actors. And a lot of you in this room might have taken an online course before, and you may have not been protected from a bad actor. I know I had online courses that they weren't interactive. It was just read the book, midterm, final, and that's just not acceptable. So now the Department of Education has really outlined what that should look like. And how we can make sure we're doing what was right by students. So if we've been doing courses and offering courses in a way that was fair to students, that reached multiple learning styles, that we had a great course design, then you're not going to have to worry too much. But it also allowed the opportunity to expand what we think of distance education. So it's actually got code in there or language in the regulations that will open the door for like virtual reality, augmented reality, online education, and what that looks like in the future. So instead of using the language that we have where it talks about a VCR and a cassette tape, it really moved the language forward and allowed us to look forward in what maybe distance education looks like in the future. Another shift that was noticed in there was the ability to focus on competency-based education and the skills versus the seat time. Now, there's still a lot of areas that we were restricting to how we calculate seat time, but it was really good and promising to see that the past regulations really didn't allow competency-based education where this does. So I know a lot of institutions aren't there yet, but it's on the horizon. I think we should start thinking about some of that, about how competency-based education could work. And now you probably have heard this from your distance learning administrators or someone on your campus talking about regular and substantive interaction. And again, that is a part of the new regulations. Again, for me, it was great because what we have been preaching about what's good online instruction, now we have the federal government saying, you got to have good online instruction. So substantive interaction is engaging students in teaching, learning, and assessment consistent with content under discussion. So it has to include two of the following. It has to have providing direct instruction, assessing and providing feedback on students' coursework, providing information or responding to questions about the content of a course or competency, other instructional activities approved by the institution. So in other words, and a lot of us had to do this during the beginning of the pandemic, was, let's say, a history instructor who never taught online before. All right, now you have to go home, you have to teach online. And all they did was record the lectures and put those online. That would be one of those two areas. That would be providing direct instruction. What it didn't do is allow students to ask questions throughout the lecture. It wouldn't allow students to have feedback given to them on their work. And so all you would have to do to a lecture like that is add some assessment to it and use some of the tools that are in place within your learning management system or other software that allows you to add questions or have follow up with a formative assessment, allowing students to submit work. And so you really have to make sure that it's more engaging. The midterm in the final, and that's it for our online course, is not acceptable. We all know that wasn't best practice anyway. And so we have to have those ongoing discussions in the online environment, just like you would in a face-to-face environment. Again, the emphasis here is providing the student the opportunity for the substantive interaction on a predictable and scheduled basis that is aligned with how long the course is. And so let's think of a face-to-face class. We meet twice a week for an hour and a half. If we have an online component of that, then there would be need to be about an hour and a half or 3 hours that week dedicated towards curriculum of students being able to read material, answer questions, and they only have to be provided the opportunity. So if the instructor were to provide discussion forums and a student chose not to participate, that's the students. You have done our duty in allowing that opportunity to take place.
Swap it, or Alex can for you.
Well, she's in.
Oh, she's in that thing. I can do it for you if you send it to me.
Monitoring the students' academic engagement and success, and ensuring that the instructor is responsible for promptly and proactively engaging in substantive interaction is important, with the students needing the basis of monitoring. So this is where the instructor is proactive, looking at the grade books, looking at how well the student is performing, and being proactive about that, telling the student, hey, you're about to fail, you haven't been participating, your grades are down, just some type of progress report. That's important too. And there's a lot of tools that you already have access to that help you out with this. Personal learning designers within OpenLMS, you may have a Viso, you may have other tools that allow you to get an automated message when a student isn't participating, but those are one way that you have to monitor students' academic engagement. This doesn't mean you have to print out a report of how often a student logs in or how often a student submits an assignment or how much time they spend within the learning management system. It's just the instructor is monitoring that, and that the student's not caught off guard at any point with a failure in the class. I can provide this link. This link will come with it. And this is the 77 pages of really interesting reading for someone like me about the conversation back and forth on where these definitions came from. And also the spirit of it, really. The spirit of this is not to come down and say no online instruction, it can't be done. It's actually the opposite. Online instruction is the way forward. It's the way we're going to offer and give equitable access to our students. And so let's just do it right when we do it. So what is academic engagement? Again, they do a really good job of defining this in that document. It's active participation by a student in instructional activity related to the student's course of study. So again, this is much different than what we've heard from SACS or anyone else. A student just logging into a course is not academic engagement. The student must work with the content in the course. It has to be related to the student learning outcome. So a student completing an online orientation would not be considered academic engagement. So that's the other part of this. The other the other little nuance that a lot of people are still trying to figure out what it means is, because it's automated, doesn't mean it's substantive interaction. So we have a lot of third-party vendors that we may use that allow students to participate, that allow students to go out on a third party, do all this work, and then then the instructor doesn't engage at all. So that's not what's being used, considered as substantive interaction. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use that. I used Sam Cengage to help teach Microsoft Excel. It was a phenomenal tool, but on the back end of it, it has to have an instructor there. So when students get stumped, they're able to quickly respond to students, able to quickly answer those questions. And so you just can't hand off your students. I don't think us as institutions want to do this, hand our students off to someone else and not follow up with it. So also some adaptive learning systems like McGraw-Hill's Connect, some of those tools that allow some really intriguing videos and so forth, that's not off limits. It's just, it has to have that instructor component behind it to support students when they run across these questions. And I have found this software actually helpful for me to focus my time as an instructor on focusing on the more meaningful things instead of teaching a bunch of things students are already aware of. So if I were to have any recommendations, I would utilize that learning management system whenever possible. If you can have an assignment inside a learning management system and keep them there, that would be great. Because if you come in, if the Department of Education were to come in and audit your course, it's really easy to say, all right, here's a discussion forum. We had opportunities and there was some dialogue that went there. Even if an instructor is answering emails are still allowed. Obviously, you want to email your students back and forth, but if you can have like a frequently asked questions board where you can document that you're answering these questions. It benefits all the students as well, but also helps cover you in case of an audit. Having virtual office hours posted within the learning management system is a great idea also, because that again demonstrates the students have the opportunity to reach out to the instructor for assistance. All 58 community colleges systems have IntelliBoard. IntelliBoard has a really good tool of taking all the data that's inside of Blackboard and Moodle or Canvas or DTL, whatever tool you're using, and pull that out and just make it easy to recognize what's going on. IntelliBoard will also send automated reports to students to let them know that they haven't logged in, or it can email the instructor that says this student hasn't logged in. And so that's a really good tool that you have as well. And honestly, course design solves so many of these problems. If the course is designed properly, it's regularly in substantive interaction on a predictable basis. So if you have a 15-week course, then you have 15-week modules, or you have some type of consistency from each week to week so that the students know what's about to happen. They have a syllabus at the top. The syllabus says, here's your course outline. This is when you can expect it. And then the course design follows that as well, with an accurate grade book that reflects that students not being caught off guard. So again, a lot of this comes to really good course design and using those strategies. And the third-party vendors, this is going to be a nationwide issue for them as far as how do you document how long a student was inside of a third party. I think again, if you're in your syllabus, if you post these are when the assignments are due and this is how you get assistance, you're going to be better off. But also if somehow or another we could get them to send us reports of how long students were on task. And that's going to be where one institution by themselves asking for that is not going to be as impactful for all of us asking. But the good thing about that is you have some big powerhouses, universities that are going to be asking for this information. So they're going to have to come around to this. I would recommend some type of distance education handbook on your campus. This is what we expect from our faculty. This is what we expect from adjunct faculty as well. This again helps cover you when if you were to get audited. Here are the expectations we had for faculty. They were trained on this. Quality matter rubrics, if you have access to those. If you don't, you can use your own type of rubric, and have random in-house audits where you have instructional designers or fellow colleagues within the institution. They just jump into their course, go through with a rubric and say, yeah, I think you're doing well. That will help identify not only Department of Education regulations, but again, the whole goal is just to give students a quality online experience. And the online evaluation tools. So if you have department chairs that go and evaluate face-to-face instruction, you need to also have something that's similar to that with the online environment. I just went through a 10-year report for SACS, and it was nice to have adjunct evaluation that I could support as evidence that we evaluated all our courses as well. All right, so transitioning to our delivery methods that is defined by the State Board Code. Most of you are very familiar with this, but I'm going to just go over a couple things, then we're going to jump into what maybe HyFlex is. First of all, traditional instruction is when it's delivered face-to-face with the instructor in the physical presence of the students. Online is 100% of instruction is delivered online. Hybrid is greater than 50%, but less than 100% online. Blended is less than or equal to 50% of instruction is delivered online. So about 2 to 3 years ago, these are pretty clear cut in what you wanted to do and how you could do things. And then the pandemic hits, and we have students who are in a traditional instruction that can't be in the presence of the students because they're in quarantine or whatever other reasons. So how do we switch in that? And then also any of the online instruction components. When can a student come to campus and get assistance? And I think that's where the popularity of HyFlex is come into play. In our State Board Code, you have to be creative in your scheduling and how you make it work, because I think the State Board Code requires students to be in person a portion before the census date. And so we're trying to address that at the time being, but right now you just kind of get creative. But what HyFlex really is that the student has an opportunity to choose whether they attend in person or whether they're going to participate online. That may be synchronous or asynchronous. So this goes to the student who from last year was in quarantine, couldn't come to campus. How did they still keep up with the class? How could they continue moving forward? But this was also popular because of enrollment numbers. This started off in San Francisco State because they didn't have enough students to make a face-to-face section. They didn't have enough students to make an online section. So what they did was they made a HyperFlex or HyFlex course where the instructor provided instruction face-to-face, and then they'd have students log in at the same time from their home, or they'd have an asynchronous component. So I've got a little chart down here, and it's really up to the instructor or you on what HyFlex is and how it's defined by you. First of all, you'll see in the table that HyFlex always includes a face-to-face component. However, it could be only face-to-face and online synchronous. That means I turn on the Zoom camera when I'm teaching, and beyond that, the student has some things to do in a learning management system, but if they miss class, they'll have to go back and watch the recording to some extent. Then there's the face-to-face component with an online asynchronous component, where I'm going to teach face-to-face. I'm not going to have a camera turned on, because if you can't make it, then you'll just need to do the asynchronous part, and we'll be paced the same. So you'll pace the course the same way you would in either method. And then there's this HyFlex model, which is online synchronous and online asynchronous. That would be the most flexible, but it's also probably the most challenging for an instructor to incorporate, because you have to have the technology in place. You have to have a course in place in the learning management system. So here are my thoughts on HyFlex. First of all, it's the right thing to do for students if you can do it, if you can get to that point. The educational study group found that students see the faculty and the institution support them because they have flexibility in their schedule. Equity undergirds this model because all learners must have full access to the instructor, each other, and the learning resources. Now, my recommendations on best practices would be refrain from the idea of HyFlex being a face-to-face course with an online option. Think of it as it's an online course with a face-to-face option. And I know that sounds the same, but it's really not. When I taught online courses, it would have been wonderful for some of my students to know that every Wednesday from 9 to 12 o'clock, I would be in a room. So if they wanted to come get some face-to-face instruction, they could. Also, it's easy to transition from an online course, if you had an online course in place first, you can teach that face-to-face much easier than you can take a face-to-face course and transition to offering that content online. So if you can really develop a backbone of an online asynchronous course, and that's so much easier to transition to a face-to-face because your PowerPoint, your content, all that stuff is sitting there. You also need to consider faculty workload as you develop this. It is like two lesson plans. It's two different delivery methods happening at the same time. So that might be something you want to consider. Sometimes institutions would offer the first semester as it will be considered two courses as they develop that course and get it ready to go. I would not offer a course HighFlex unless the instructor was 100% on board or it's not going to be done right. I wouldn't offer HighFlex if there wasn't an online component ready to go. So if you have a course in mind that you think would be really well done on through HighFlex and there's nothing there, maybe postpone it a year until you get it to that point. So your students are getting the best experience. And also remember the Department of Education regulations when it comes to this, that once you offer it as distance education through the internet, it is then considered distance education. So if half of your class is being offered online and asynchronous, those online asynchronous students have to have the same access to the content, ask questions, ask their instructor questions, and get quality feedback from the instructor. All right, then finally, I timed this very well, about 2 or 3 more minutes left. NC Sarah, used to when NC Sarah was always talked about, it was talked about as online students taking a class outside of the state and participating inside the state. That is no longer just a distance learning admin issue. It is an entire institution issue. The new requirements apply to all programs leading to professional licensure and certification, regardless of what mode of delivery. So if it's just face-to-face, you still have to let students know if your professional licensure or certificate transfers out of state. A lot of institutions at this point are just saying, we haven't determined if they do, but still there's this process before a student makes a financial commitment to the course that they are made aware of where that professional licensure can transfer out of state. This includes curriculum and continuing education. And the best thing you can do is have a really good defensible process here. So you need to have a committee somewhere on your campus that you all get together. This is going to include student enrollment services. This is going to include continuing education, curriculum, deans, chairs, to come together and say, look, what is the process? And this is where you take care of a lot of these issues. What is the process by which a student comes to campus on the same day and we can give them some type of notification about this professional licensure? So if it leads to professional licensure or a certificate, then you have to let them know. And what does that look like? So it has to, a defensible process is what NC Sarah is going to look for also. So making sure that everything's documented, is it revisited, who's on your committee, and does it go through an annual review process? Again, the NC Sarah VLC, the virtual learning community, has some really great resources on this. And Kathy Davis has done a lot of work on trying to organize this, and they've actually done also a lot of work on looking out at outside state agencies. So if you're an HVAC student on your campus and a student's about to move to another state, the VLC has a database. If a student's moving to Alabama, for example, we can say you can contact this person in Alabama to see whether or not those credentials will transfer over. All right, that was right on the 30-minute mark. So questions or comments, please email me at Freeman L, and I'll be glad to answer any of those questions.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Lane. And as usual, always learning things whenever I'm in your presence. And I had no doubt that you would be able to deliver an online module in exactly your allotted time. So fantastic. So if folks have questions, I don't know, we'll try to save a little bit of time at the end, but I'll go ahead and tee up Matt for our business engagement and credit for prior learning discussion. So Matt, I'm seeing both mics muted.
How's that?
Perfect.
All right. No echo, right? Okay. Cool. Hey, everybody. Matt Meyer, Associate Vice President for Business Engagement, National International Partnerships. I'm going to go pretty quick. Just want to get through this information. But the first thing I'd like to talk about is a major initiative, a major tool that is running out of my office in partnership with the Department of Commerce. Now, if you've read any of the federal grants, you'll probably see the word sector partnership all through them. All right. And we have since really 2000, when did we go to Arizona, Nate? That was like 2016, 17. The state of North Carolina has been involved in sector partnerships in one way or another. And as you are working on grants, as you are moving forward and you need to establish a local industry sector partnership, well, we've got the experience, we've got the tools, we can train, we can convene, we can facilitate, and we can help your college moving forward with that. And essentially, if you've never heard, or if you think you know what sector strategies are, they're a little bit different the way we are addressing them here in North Carolina. And it's really industry driven. We put industry at the center table, let them really define the agenda. And we sit on the background, we sit against the wall outside and listen. And then they pull us in as we need. And quite honestly, it's not rocket science, but man, it's an effective flip of the model. Instead of us pushing to them, they are pulling from us. We've got 3 ongoing, very successful partnerships right now in the state, 2 in manufacturing, 1 in healthcare over here in the Northeast. We've got some that we are developing as we talk, an IT sector partnership around the RTP. And then we've got a healthcare, another healthcare one out west, and 1 in construction. All right. The other thing that my office works on is we try to keep up with all the initiatives in the state, and there are a lot. I did a scan not too long ago, a couple months ago, and there are 18 ongoing state level initiatives around workforce, economic development, and higher education. And before doing that scan, there were 21. So we archived a few of them had sunset, done their great thing. But then we added a bunch. I'm not going to read that definition to you, but that's kind of the one we're using. And so I'm going to hit on a few, not all 18, but some that I feel are extremely important that you need to know about if you do not already. And NC Careers Portal is a big one for us. It's www.nccareers.org. Go to it, bookmark it. It is our state's one-stop site for career information. And it's being continually developed. We're working on it. We're looking for colleges to begin to dive deep and tell us what else they would like to see on the site. So that's a great one. Then there's also the attainment goal. You hear a lot of times the My Future NC goal. Well, it's really an education attainment goal that myfuturenc.org is leading. And we are a big time partner with them. Again, that goal is 2 million credentialed individuals by the year 2030, and those are ages 25 to 44. And there's a lot of efforts going on around education attainment. Another one, we're getting ready to do a launch on December 9th or December 6th. Yeah, December 6th, and I'll be sending out information on it. It is NC Career Launch. It is a National Governors Association Policy Academy funded initiative for the state, all about work-based learning. And so I'll be sending out more information on that initiative fairly soon. Then there's the NC Impact, and I know some of our colleges are involved in this. And the session, I forget what date, I think it's November 17th, Emily Ganji from the UNC School of Government is going to talk about this initiative to us and where they are and how things are going. Credentials as you go. This is new, something that we partnered with the UNC system just this past summer. the SUNY system out of New York is leading. We're also one of the states with Colorado. The community college system, there's 4 colleges that are going to be a part of our piloting this credentials as you go. And for us, we've been doing it. You look at our IT programs with how credentials are already embedded in those programs. And this is really a research project to look at the impacts, the effect, what kind of wages individuals are coming out with when they have those embedded industry certifications in their curriculum. It's a great little project. It's going to give us a lot of data. And I think eventually they want to go big time and scale to more colleges across the country. So it could be more money, more of our colleges getting involved in this project. Reach, I think Dr. Crane has talked about this. He was on our quarterly update call a week ago. And he may have been on the orientation talking about it. So, but you got this slide. Hopefully we'll make the slides available. The Hispanic Latino Action Coalition is another state initiative that we act as the facilitator for this group. So it is about 34 members of organizations, nonprofit organizations that target the state's the Latino population. It's the Southeast, because we've got members from South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida involved in this group. But it's a great way for me as a facilitator of it to get information and be able to connect this group to our colleges. So let me talk a little bit about Prior Learning. Prior Learning is a project that I've been involved in, been leading or co-leading since 2017 or 18. We've been working on it. You might have heard that we've got some policy now in the books that was passed last spring, February sometime. And we are currently working on the curriculum procedures manual. We've got that pretty close and ready to go. I know Lisa is on this call, and Lisa, don't hold back. As I'm going through these Prior Learning slides, if you see anything I miss, just holler. We are at the point right now working with our faculty panels, looking at crosswalks. So we are taking the work that Nate's team with the NC Workforce Credentials has done. We're taking industry recognized credentials that are on that list, and we are crosswalking them to our curriculum programs. You can see some of the colleges that are involved in those faculty panels to look at those industry recognized credentials, come up with the proposed credit or the courses that would articulate, if that's the right word, what we'll be doing. We finished up a bunch of these. We're hoping to get everything ready for a vote and for the February CCRC meeting. It won't have everything, and these are not written in stone. It's a very dynamic process. And so we'll be bringing more of those crosswalks to colleges and to the CCRC as we go throughout the next year. I think this is state board. I'm not going to talk about it, but these are some of the buckets, big buckets that are in the policy. And also when we look at the panels, it's kind of how we broke down a few of the panels. Now, most of the crosswalk panels are broken down by program area. Here's an example of the crosswalk that you will have access to eventually. So it'll have the industry certification, where you can find that certification or more information, the credits, and what class that it articulates to. We've also got, for our registrars, how to transcribe the different types of prior learning. And that I believe it's accessible somewhere. It's going to be attached to our manual, I think. If not, we're going to be providing those links to where you can find it. I think it's in the ServiceNow library, if that's the right term, or they have some type of procedures manual as well. But we can get that for your registrars, or if you need it, just let us know. And the state board code, just for your reference, so if you dig into it, this is where it's at. It's 800.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. Yeah, okay. I thought about going into the policy, but I didn't want to put you all to sleep. So I think I am done, quick and easy. Back to you, Nate.
Thanks, Matt. And it looks like we definitely, I'm just looking through the chat here. We had a couple of things pop in. I see where Lisa was sharing some information about the procedures chapter and exactly where that is. And the transcription policy also being approved at the CCRC's October 27th meeting. So great. We have a little bit of time, so I just wanted to check to see if folks have questions that you want to talk through, or while we've got these experts on the line. And yeah, I'll pause for a moment just to see if folks have thoughts or questions for either Lane or Matt. Guys might be getting off the hook easy today.
Hey.
Practicing those pauses, those online pauses. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Matt, for providing your update, and thank you, Lane, as well, for giving us some information around distance education. You guys are certainly great resources, and so I want to make sure that the folks on this call know who you are and know where you exist. So I'm sure that both of these folks will be more than happy to answer questions if you guys have any in the future. I know that when we get back to our desk, we often have those. So definitely feel free to reach out. Otherwise, just want to thank again Dr. Meyer, Dr. Freeman for joining us. And JW, any closing comments for us?
Yeah, I believe Dr. Woodson has her hand up and I think she has a question.
There it is. I missed it.
Yeah, sorry. I just was kind of thinking through questions, sorry. And I did see your information about being added to the listserv, so thank you. So if I am reading your slide correctly, it appears as if we are doing online evaluations that we can use those as evidence if we are audited. Or do we need to show that evidence in a Blackboard course? And I asked this question because, you know, I sent this to the deans while we were on the meeting to say, hey, here's some, you know, best practices. So I know emails are still permitted, but then they're hard to capture. So, you know, messages live within the Blackboard course, but if we see evidence of emails and we're doing evaluations and their faculty are providing that, can that serve as the evidence, or do we need to bring back up a Blackboard course, restore it and say, here's the RSI?
Yeah, I think the evaluation might help. We actually reached out to lawyers up in DC about these new regulations. And they were, again, of course, lawyers don't speak directly to an answer. They use very general terms. But the syllabus is, they actually put more weight on the syllabus being in place and accurate, that it would demonstrate it. I think, you know, as you take your courses over a period of years and they are archived and pulled back, we're also looking at how to do that most efficiently. You may have to pull up a course at some point that has that information in there. I think the online evaluation would just be best practice, in that I don't think an auditor is going to come in and ask for that. But if you could show that, that would be great. But also, that's going to be like, you're going to find out the gaps internally before someone outside comes and looks at it. And just, again, SACS is going to be more particular about that than what the Department of Education is.
Well, we just, yeah, and so we're already doing the online course reviews, but I guess my question is, you know, we don't, except for when we're using those emails for financial audit purposes, we don't save those emails. Like, I'm not going to save 27 emails to a given student. I guess I'm just asking, do we need to use the messages? I know emails are permitted, but you know, we use Aviso a lot for messages. And
yeah, I get, again, I'm probably different than some people in that I don't think, if you tell instructors that every email has to be documented, they're just not going to email as much.
right.
So I would say have the that if you can answer a general question in the learning management system, do that. But do not dissuade people from having those one-on-one conversations. They won't need to be pulled back up, I don't think,
Okay.
because the important things, that's what's good about office hours being posted within the learning management system. Also in the syllabus is that students have that opportunity. So if you have virtual office hours posted in your syllabus and in the course, then it's more likely to believe that this instructor had interaction with students. What you can't have is a discussion forum where the instructor doesn't participate in a discussion forum. I've seen that in a lot of courses where, and a lot of you probably participated in courses where there was a discussion forum, post once, reply twice, and then the instructor stepped away from the classroom and there was no facilitation of that conversation. So that's another thing you need to follow up, probably just within your online evaluations of those courses. Is the instructor actively engaged in discussion forums? That would be one like little checkbox that you could have. And that would probably, if someone from the Department of Ed were to come in to look at a course, you probably would hand them this and they're going to go look for another course that might not have those types of things.
All right. Okay. All right. That helps. Thank you.
Awesome. Great discussion. Anyone else have any other questions or thoughts?
I
As,
can't
I'll
remember
channel
when
my,
RSI questions.
channel my best Wayne Madry here. Questions, comments, concerns, donations. Well, if not, just a quick reminder that we'll be back together again tomorrow, 10 a.m. again. Dr. Eads and I will be providing some information for you around CCP, Career and College Promise, and we will be there with bells on. So look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow, and make sure to get your coffee and we'll be prepared for your questions.